It's the first Friday since the coronavirus regulations have really kind of come into force, and I think a lot of people are feeling it. And rightly so. These are very strange times. And in these strange times, I've actually been looking at Psalm 137, which is what I want to look at now, to try to get some inspiration about how we can possibly live through the next weeks and months. And Psalm 137 is famous in church circles, but also in the wider world. Boney M had a hit in the 70s with the first couple of verses. And it goes like this: "By the rivers of Babylon where we sat down, there we wept when we remembered Zion. On the willows we hung up our lyres. For there our captors required of us songs, and our tormentors in mirth said, 'Sing us one of the songs of Zion.' But how shall we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land?" And really, this draws on an extraordinary historical circumstance that the Jewish people went through, and there's a context to this psalm. So I'll just go through that context. In 587 BC, Jerusalem was sacked by the Babylonian Empire, essentially just a stronger empire in the ancient Near East. And it was the policy of the Babylonians to deport the people that they captured. Now, exactly how many of the Israelites were taken to Babylon, we don't know, but probably tens of thousands were shipped away from Jerusalem and the land that they knew, and they were taken to Babylon. And it really feels like this is the historical context for this psalm. By the rivers of Babylon, where we sat down and wept, for we remembered Zion. And what's interesting to me reading this psalm now is that normally I read it in the knowledge of the exile that finished. And it didn't last forever. By either destiny or his extraordinary set of coincidences, the Babylonian Empire themselves were defeated by a stronger empire, the Persian Empire. And King Cyrus of Persia, who was the king in 540 when they defeated the Babylonians, he didn't have a problem with the Israelites. So he said, yeah, go off, go back to Jerusalem. That's fine by me. And so they went back and they rebuilt the temple which had been sacked, and that was a sort of glorious moment for them. And later they would look back on the exile, and it was an extraordinary moment of kind of a reflection about who they were, who their God was, how they could relate to God, and very, very creative in their thinking. A lot of biblical books, including some bits of Genesis, were kind of written around that time. But when we read this Psalm 137, it's not them looking back on the exile and how creative it was. It's them living through the exile, which, as far as the person who writes this psalm is concerned, may never end. And that, I think, is something we can really tap into now, because part of the problem is we don't know when all these coronavirus regulations are going to end. And I can understand why Boris Johnson has given a kind of deadline. He said, well, if we all work on it together, we can get it licked in 12 weeks. And I can understand that because psychologically it's easier to deal with something which has an end. But truthfully, we don't know. It will pass, but we don't know how long we're going to be in this foreign land trying to sing a song in a strange land. And the next bit of inspiration I want to take from this psalm is actually from the end of it, which is one of the dirty secrets of the Bible and the church. It ends like this: "O daughter of Babylon, you devastator, happy shall be he who has revenge on you with what you've done to us. Happy shall be he who takes your little ones and dashes them against the rock." And it's a horrendous vision of vengeance in which little children of your enemies get killed by being smashed against a rock. And as sure as eggs is eggs, I bet that's not in the lyrics to Boney M. And it's certainly not when we sing this in church. The choir will often sing a psalm, and if I'm honest, we quietly drop verses 7 to 9 because it's so toxic and embarrassing, and we don't want to be singing beautiful melodies about this horrendous vision of vengeance. But I think there's something we can learn from it, and which is that there's anger. Remember, their life has been completely ruined. They've been taken out from Jerusalem, out from everything they built up, all those relationships. They've been dumped in some foreign land where they've got no rights, and nothing has gone right for them. And that anger is real, and it's preserved there in those verses in the Bible. And I think that's something which is going to be real for us as well, as people lose their jobs, as there's massive health emergencies, and people will be dying even now. There's going to be a lot of anger. The trick will be to try to deal with that well, because the coronavirus is not any human person's fault. No one set out to do the damage. We're just living with the damage. And can we change that anger and harness it into good, so that we're singing a good song in a foreign land? And there has been a lot of good. Even now in Surbiton, neighbours are really reaching out to each other, and all over the country. And that is the beautiful thing which is coming out. And I wonder if we can harness that. But let's not ignore the potential for huge amounts of anger, and recognise that those feelings will be there. But can we somehow transpose those into good? And I think that will be the challenge for the coming weeks and months.